Hello everybody, my name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you as always on the show today. We have some interesting new reporting from the Middle East Eye we will go through about what Hamas is saying about a potential governing arrangement for after this, whatever happens with this war, this genocide on the Gaza Strip. And it's relatively interesting to see what they have to say. We'll also give you just general updates as 78 have been killed in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours of Israeli attacks on Gaza. Also, we will take you back to Washington and to St. Louis, where Cori Bush's primary is underway and heating up. AIPAC is set to drop in millions in attacks in the United for Democracy and all their PACs that they have set up. We'll give you the latest on that and how Cori Bush is responding. Also, the new analysis from Judith Levine in The Intercept about abortion and the effects abortion bans have been having. And it is, kind of ironic, the impact that it has had over, a period of time, but it is definitely not in a good way by any stretch of the imagination. This is Newsflash. We're very excited for you to be with us here today. All right, so we start here today with the latest from the war on Gaza, as Hamas has prepared to apparently show flexibility. This is from David Hurst, who was reporting for the Middle East Eye in Doha. They say that Hamas is prepared to show flexibility about the future government of Gaza, as long as the decision to rule the war-battered enclave is agreed upon by Palestinian factions and not opposed upon the people of Gaza, really, by the United States or Israel. A senior Palestinian source with knowledge of Hamas's policies has told Middle East Eye. And of course, this could be a representative of one faction trying to put one thing out there, or, even one faction within Hamas. We have heard in the past that there is a bit of a division between the political and military, bureaus about how hard to go, between the Ismail Haniyeh and the other guy's name is escaping me at the moment. Ismail Haniyeh, I believe, though, is the one in Qatar. But, like the head of Al-Qassam brigades, is Hamas's military wing, can sometimes have a bit of a different perception. So, again, obviously the broader point is, this could be just one source trying to get a message out there for some reason that's not entirely reflective of the movement of Hamas, and they could change their mind at some point later in the future. But on the other hand, this does kind of line up with reporting that we have heard in the past, including them calling for the release of Muhammad. I was going to say Mustafa Barghouti, but he's the guy who is the P&I member. But the guy they have in prison is Marwan Barghouti, who has been in jail for the Second Intifada, who is a big leader in the Palestinian National. I hope I'm not. I think I'm getting the. Mustafa Barghouti founded the Palestinian National Initiative, but Marwan Barghouti is somebody who is widely seen to be kind of Palestinian unity figure. They called for his release, even though he's not part. I believe he's either part of the P&I faction with his relative, or he is part of the Fatah. He's definitely not part of Hamas, and they called for his release. That is seen by many people as a gesture towards wanting to have some Palestinian unity, wanting to bring people to, the different kind of more secular sides of, and maybe, the less violence and less radical inclined members of the just general Palestinian resistance together. So that's definitely something that they have expressed a desire to do in the past. So that would be in line, doing some sort of, election, some sort of tribunal, some sort of council. And again, I think that is the bottom line. That is the pathway to treating Palestinians, or to building long-lasting peace, is to treat Palestinians like they are a state, which is a very hard thing, I think, at this point for the U.S. or the West, just generally, the quote-unquote international community to do. Of these kind of top white, predominantly, European and United States, Australia, New Zealand, all those nations, just not used to. We talked about yesterday the Australian Parliament voting down the recognition of the state of Palestine. So it kind of shows how far it reaches, and this really strong desire, and it was a really overwhelming vote too, by the way. There's a really strong desire to refuse to. It's almost like they just forgot how to do it. Just treat Palestinians like they are of their own nation. And honestly, I think it's very obviously up for debate whether they ever knew how to do that since the founding of Israel. I think it's very fair to say that a lot of people just never did. But that is the only way to get Palestinians to peace and security, and also to get Israelis to peace and security. I personally think the best possible way forward is kind of a broader one-state solution where you have a democratic rights for all under one country from that stretches the entire borders. But I do think you should give the Golan Heights back to Syria. They've been through enough over there. But that is the way where Palestinians and Israelis can feel equally at home, equally have equal rights, can treated the same by the government. I think that will be, and it's not going to be an easy process. It's going to be a lot of distrust. It's going to be probably a lot of violence in the way to that. But that is the only way, I think, towards lasting peace, is just to really put everyone on as equal a playing field as possible. But the best the international community can really seem to offer at this point is just a, really just increasingly diminished versions of a state. The snide remarks Hillary Clinton made a few weeks ago about the 2006 deal, or I think what's into the 1990s deal that my husband put it on the table and Palestinians would have a state for 30 years by now. But that wasn't a state. You didn't have an airport, you didn't have currency, you didn't have any sovereignty, you had complete Israeli control of your borders, and just getting decreased versions of a state. The revamped Palestinian Authority. Like, the Palestinian Authority is a joke. They are complete Israeli collaborators. They kill in the West Bank just as many, or lead to the deaths of just as many people as Israeli forces do. It is an absolutely incredible display of collaboration and just complete unrepresentativeness of the Palestinians. And it's definitely not the leaders of a Palestinian state. And it's completely unserious to say you want a Palestinian state and say, we'll just put the Palestinian Authority, a revamped Palestinian Authority in charge of that. And, when you hear Israel and U.S. talking about doing the revamping, you better believe it is not it's not going to be revamping to, maybe include more Palestinian factions, make it more representative. No, it's going to be to make it more pro-Israel and more collaborative. And that is what the essential kind of reality of this is you are not going to be able to ensure long-lasting peace, ensure any sort of long security if you don't have a government that all Palestinians feel is representative of them. They say here, Hamas is confident that it's deeply rooted in the region and nobody can bypass it. The source told Middle East Eye. Nevertheless, Hamas has the political flexibility to accept several formulas for the future of Gaza. It is open to a nationally agreed formula for the good of its people. But, keyword nationally agreed. Within the Palestinian people, there has to be some sort of agreement. I think that is a very smart play, because that shows, if the Palestinians are able to feel represented, they feel like they have a leader or a leadership structure or government that they can get behind. That is going to be such a key path on the stepping stone to a state, sovereignty, security, and the lack of any desire for Palestinians or need for Palestinians to engage in resistance and some sort of justice for the 76 years now of crimes after crimes that they have been subject to. Talks over ceasefire were due to resume this week, but Hamas told international mediators on Tuesday that was ending its participation following Sunday's massacre in Rafah by Israel. At least 45 people were killed and dozens more wounded, most of them children, when Israel struck a camp housing displaced Palestinians at the Tel El Sultan neighborhood of western Rafah. The airstrikes, which resulted in some Palestinians being burned alive, came just 2 days after the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah. Hamas does not have to sit down for negotiations while Israelis continue killing, a source close to the organization told Middle East Eye. I mean, again, is a fair, I think I personally think it would be I personally think it would be better for them to push with those negotiations no matter what, because it at least is just you're doing something. But it also, I think Israelis have showed and they have acted in every way as if they could not care less about peace, as if they could not care less about getting their hostages back when it comes to, juxtaposed against the opportunity to kill and torture more Palestinian people. But the airstrikes, which resulted in some Palestinians being burned alive, came just 2 days after the ICJ ordered Israel to halt its military offensive in Rafah. So this, people who do not care about any sort of international law, they shove it up our, collective ass. This is what Israel does with this action, this brutal, heinous war crime. And meanwhile, we have the killing of an Egyptian soldier. And this is continuing while the massacres happen, and providing covers for massacres that even led to the killing of an Egyptian soldier. It'd be very, very interesting to learn, more about this. Some sort of, media blackout has been posed by both sides. Not clear, again, who started the firing on that. Definitely something you're going to want to watch. We're going to watch in the future. Speaking on Saturday before the strikes on the refugee camps, the first tour said negotiations had been effectively deadlocked after the failure of the last round in Cairo and Doha. He said the negotiations following Israel's assault on Rafah were now at an impasse, and the U.S. was needed to address issues with Israel over a permanent ceasefire. For Hamas, it is clear that U.S. has to deal with these negotiations. They, meaning Israel, should respect the document Hamas has accepted without playing silly games and trying to bypass Hamas's basic demands. And the U.S. is going to be, there all along to do that. I think we've seen, pretty clearly that they have put forward a framework that they are saying that they are accepted. And Israelis have, whether you like it or not, it is just a fact. The Israelis have done no such thing. After the talks fell in Cairo, U.S. sources blamed Egypt for amending the offer to Hamas in its favor. The claim was greeted with fury in Cairo. This, but again, as U.S./Israel tensions with Egypt get higher, you may as well just jumble the two countries together at this point. It's just ridiculous. The Palestinian source backed Egypt's versions of events. He said that Egypt had not amended the document, and the U.S. were fully aware of any and all amendments, as CIA chief Bill Burns was present in both Cairo and Doha, where the document was being discussed. Hamas announced its amendments, and they were accepted by negotiators. The American side was informed and accepted the document. It's not the mistake of Egypt. The Israelis backed away from this deal, and the U.S. did not force them to accept something that would have been in their favor. But meanwhile, we have seen some fury or some inter-Palestinian fighting because we have seen, kind of contrary to the headline of this, as the war in Gaza goes on for an 8th month. And again, can you even call the PA, really seriously representative of the Palestinian people? I think they're kind of making the assumption by saying this, or the source is at this time, is kind of making the assumption when they say this, that the PA is just not part of the equation here, because they have so far gone in terms of actually committing any sort of trust and respect with the Palestinian people. So as the war grinds on, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed that Israel will maintain security over Gaza, and has been criticized by the U.S. for failing to come up with a credible post-war plan for who governs the shattered enclave. When he last spoke about the issue in February, he supported or suggested replacing Hamas with local representatives who are not affiliated with terrorist countries or groups and are not financially supported by them. In reality, the attempt to replace a central government with a network of clan leaders had already run into the ground. Weeks earlier, tribal leaders in Gaza denounced Israeli army proposals to divide Gaza into areas ruled by tribes or clans rather than a single political entity, trying to essentially, there are these kind of, larger, very prominent families throughout Gaza, and throughout Palestine in general, and they have not taken very kindly to this, because they know this is an attempt to kind of delegitimize them, take them one step back in their political development. A month later, reports emerged that Israel was considering installing Majed Faraj, head of the PA's intelligence apparatus, as the administrator of Gaza. That too failed. An attempt by Faraj to infiltrate a group of armed men posing as protection to an Egyptian aid convoy was rumbled, and the group was arrested. Since then, Hamas has denounced maneuvers undertaken by the PA, including what it called the unilateral appointment of Mohammed Mustafa as prime minister. Hamas has said the decision was taken without consulting it, despite the group taking part in a meeting in Moscow attended by Fatah to end divisions. Since assuming office, Mustafa has outlined in a mission statement that he wants to reform the PA, reunify the West Bank and Gaza, and oversee the enclave's reconstruction. So, the PA are people who are not interested at all in working with Hamas. I don't think Hamas sees PA as part of the equation, but is more open to broader Palestinian unity and power sharing with groups that still hold sway as legitimate with among the Palestinian people, and essentially are just not open collaborators. All right. Up next on the show today, we have this from Cori Bush. Excuse me for those. Apologize for that. The AIPAC onslaught, the dark money onslaught against her in her upcoming primary, has officially begun. This is by Jessica Corbett in Common Dreams, a pro-Israel lobby's super political action committee trying to unseat progressive members of Congress who condemn the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip, is this week pouring over $250,000 of advertising into against Representative Cori Bush. This was reported by Jacob Rubashkin of Inside Elections, highlighting on social media that United Democracy Project is spending at least $216,000 on broadcast and $16,000 on radio. And I think it's going to be very, very important to see how that pans out. Essentially, who goes there, and what the what the general calculation is for this stuff. And if I think the best successful case of AIPAC spending money there was against Nina Turner. Probably, there's some others, but when they really start to build an effective ground operation with all this money, and people actually start to show up, that I think is a real warning sign, as they did, I believe, with Nina Turner in Cleveland and some of the stuff. They weren't even really talking about Israel at this point, but they had just really gotten people on the fact that Nina Turner, this was back in 2021, 2022, wasn't sufficiently pro-Biden enough for that very Democratic base district, and that was really what sunk her. In this situation, while Missouri Democrats have this Democrat has 3 primary challengers as she campaigns for a third term. Her top opponent is St. Louis County prosecuting attorney Wesley Bell, who is backed by AIPAC and other Republican billionaires. Meanwhile, this data tracked by AdImpact showed approximately $320,000 in ad reservations for cable, radio, satellite, and other formats from the super PAC with AIPAC associated with AIPAC through next week, which is pretty incredible for just that short of a time period. But again, I think it is overcomable. I think, but she needs money and she needs a kind of on the ground army ASAP. So I will definitely donate to Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, and probably the 2 most important people to donate to at the moment. She says UDP, AIPAC, this is Cori Bush, and their extensive network of far-right billionaires, anti-abortion extremists, and GOP bank donors have been promising to spend millions in their effort to defeat me ever since they first bribed my opponent to enter this race. Bush said in a statement to Politico, unfortunately for them, organized people beats organized money, and our community is ready to show that St. Louis is not for sale. So it seems like she has, I think, the right idea here on what she needs to do to win, which is organize. AIPAC, and hopefully she isn't just starting right now, AIPAC in the Republican bankrolled group that is investing $100 million in unseating progressives in their own primaries, is turning its focus to Cori Bush, said the Working Families Party. Why? Because she uses her power to fight for the needs of people, not Republican billionaires. Jewish Force for Peace Action has declared that they are coming to support Cori Bush, and Justice Democrats also took aim at AIPAC. So it was one of the Cori Bush is one of the, I think, second round Justice Democrats. So hopefully they are there to support her with, frankly, what little money they have left. Meanwhile, Jamal Bowman already $6 million spent against him. Really incredible drop of ad money just blatantly, and he is going to George Latimer. He's been a politician there for a while. He definitely has some support in places, the northern parts of that district. He's not going to win there, Jamal Bowman. He is just not going to win there. He has to really run up those numbers in the South. It's going to be a very, very close campaign if Jamal Bowman is able to win at all. And hopefully it's close, no matter what. but he is definitely facing an uphill battle there. How many children have to die? Bowman said, we are past the red line. This is a Democratic representative. Rashid Tlaib, by the way, also been phenomenal. These are people that we need for our own sanity as left-wing people to keep them in Congress no matter what. So donate, organize, come out for these people as much as you humanly possibly can, because it really is so important, and we're definitely going to be following. We have just about a month before the Jamal Bowman race. It's going to be on June 25th. August 7th, I believe, is the primary for Cori, or August 6th is going to be the primary for Cori Bush. So it's going to be something that we're really happy to be watching very, very, very closely. All right, we are wrapping up today with this pretty interesting piece here from Judith Levine in The Intercept. She writes, if the right wanted to bring more babies into the world by banning abortion, the plan is backfiring. In fact, abortions have increased since June 2022 when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Every state without a ban, especially those adjacent to red states, saw a rise in abortions from 2020 through 2023. But even with women facing severe restrictions, they have managed to end their pregnancies. In 2023, the U.S. reached its highest level in over a decade for abortions, according to the Guttmacher Institute, and that's only counting terminations recorded by formal healthcare systems. Of course, that is what every single abortion activist has always said forever when it comes to this issue, is that when you have abortions legalized or not legalized, criminalized, restricted in any type of way, they are going to get unsafer. More women are going to die. More babies are going to die unnecessarily. Especially it's just going to create just brutally unsafe situations. Like, the best way is to have, fair restrictions on it, that would encompass the amount of abortion or the rate of abortion that happens. Because as we know, the vast, I think it's like something like 90% happen in the first 2 trimesters. That is something that is perfectly logical, I think, for most people to understand as we continue to shift toward a more pro-choice stance. And again, what a failure this was for the Supreme Court and the absolute right-wing psychos like Samuel Alito, who have been praying for this, literally praying for this for the past 50 years at this point. Roe v. Wade, it was, I think, 1973. It was only around for 50 years. And not only has their political ideology suffered some really brutal defeats at the ballot box repeatedly since then, states have voted in incredibly red states, incredibly Republican people have voted across the country, in the North, in the South, in the East, in the West, to enshrine abortion in their state constitutions, and that has led to an increase in abortions, not to mention people feeling the desperation, people fleeing to other parts of the country. And, this is, again, as their political program becomes more unpopular than it literally ever has been due to their horrific overreach and the fact that they're taking so much undue, undemocratically attained power and using it to screw with the lives of women of all classes, of all races, but obviously the poor, less white ones most particularly, but really just all different groups of people. There's poor white people out there who want abortions too, and the fact is they generally do vote Republican, but when it comes to abortions, we are seeing this massive, massive sea change. While surgical abortions are harder to get, the word is out about self-managed abortion using pills. Online services like Plan C, Aid Access, and Abuzz disseminate the information. Shield laws protect blue state providers from red state prosecution if they prescribe pills via telehealth and mail to patients living under the bans. Abortion funds are in overdrive, helping abortion seekers with travel, childcare, and medical costs. The right is actively seeking to ban every one of these tools: telehealth prescription, self-management, out-of-state travel, and funds that aid and abet abortion speakers. At the same time, a U.S. feminist underground with links to overseas suppliers is outrunning the posse, sending out pills with without professional intervention, and at low cost, even free. Ironically, now that abortion is gone or all but gone in 21 states, feminists have realized the dream of over half a century of activism: free abortion on demand without apology. And that is something that is pretty incredible to see. because again, you're not going through these, private U.S. private healthcare middlemen, and you're having it made more, just with the advent of these pills, more accessible, more cheap than ever before. And also, it's just been more popular in the country than ever before. But it really has been incredible to see. But abortion has not been the only thing impeding birth since since Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the ruling that nullified Roe. A growing number of people still young enough to have children are getting sterilized. Tubal ligations and vasectomies among adults ages 18 to 30 were creeping up before the ruling, but following it, we observed an abrupt increase, authors of a research letter published last month in the JAMA Health Forum wrote. The researchers couldn't break the data out by state or by race, but unsurprisingly, the trend is gendered. As with birth control, unwanted pregnancy, and parenthood, the greater burden of permanent contraception is falling on women. The increase in procedures for females was double that for male patients, write the authors of the three Pennsylvania public health policy experts. The U.S. could see more people choosing voluntary sterilization in the future. Birth control is still legal and constitutionally protected. 9 in 10 American women have used it. Probably honestly even higher when it comes down to it. But the religious right is chipping away at that too. In Burwell versus Hobby Lobby stores, a split Supreme Court ruled that certain private companies can cite religious objections to get out of covering the cost of contraception for their employees under the Affordable Care Act. A few days later, the same slim majority decided that Wheaton College, a Christian school already exempt from using its insurance policy to pay for birth control, was unduly burdened by having to fill out a form so that a third party could cover the cost. The 2020 lawsuit by a Christian father challenging his daughter's right to get birth control without parental consent is modeled after a piece of the anti-conception long game, modeled on the strategy that slowly killed abortion rights. Just 3 years after Roe, in 1976, a Missouri requirement that minors get written parental consent for abortion was the first restriction upheld by the Supreme Court. And Donald Trump, who likes to take credit for delivering Dobbs to the right, hinted that he'd be okay with state crackdowns on contraception. Then he walked it back. As usual with Trump, though, who knows what's true? Emotionally early sterilization is not simple. The right has long claimed that women who terminate pregnancies suffer post-abortion syndrome, a lifelong residue of depression and regret. Of course, surprise, surprise, past post-abortion syndrome does not exist. In fact, the most common post-abortion emotion is relief, but post-sterilization regret is real. And a 2005 study found that the younger a woman is when she has her tubes tied, the more likely she is to wish she hadn't, request reversal, or seek in vitro fertilization to have a baby. The authors of the post-op sterilization study surmised that some of these procedures were contemplated before Roe was overturned, but felt suddenly more urgent when the bans came down. If oral contraceptive, IUD, or morning after pills, also hopefully in the near future, male birth control come in, taking kind of, I don't know if it's going to be a pill or it's going to be like a kind of less invasive or, more reversible vasectomy. I'm not entirely sure, but sterilization with regrets can be sad. Some other effects of the bans are tragic. Almost immediately after the ruling in June 2022, stories started emerging of pregnant people forced to drive hours out of state while miscarrying, carrying dead fetuses, feverish and in pain, of women going into sepsis or losing their fertility, all because of doctors feared breaking the law by practicing good medicine. While emergency rooms around the country turned away pregnant patients in distress, one Oregon OB/GYN called the situation absolutely shocking and appalling and inconceivable. Providers and advocates are holding their breaths for the first preventable death due to compulsory medical malpractice. But new research shows that deaths are already happening, caused not inadvertently by doctors, but intentionally by pregnant people's partners or pregnant people themselves. For women in abusive relationships, to get pregnant is a risk to your life. The narrative is well documented. A violent, intimate partner sensing the impending loss of control over his wife or girlfriend's body, and the arrival of a competitor for her time or attention, even if he wanted the baby at first, grows increasingly possessive, volatile, and assaultive. His menacing behavior erodes not just her freedom, but also her will to take care of herself. She grows depressed, skips prenatal clinic visits, eats poorly, and drinks, smokes or drinks, and uses drugs more, all to the detriment of her own and obviously the fetus's health. And sometimes the partner violence turns murderous. Women who are pregnant or recently gave birth are significantly more likely to be killed by an intimate partner than women of the same age who are neither pregnant nor postpartum, write the authors of a new Tulane study. The harder it is to end a pregnancy, the more danger women are in. looking at the states with multiple abortion restrictions alongside their rates of intimate partner homicide committed against women and girls aged 10 to 44. The researchers found a 3.4% rise in the state homicide rate with each restriction enforced between 2014 and 2020. The officers acknowledged the limits of the methodology, but extrapolate that nearly a quarter of those murders were associated with these statutes. Some abusive men prefer to exert control by keeping their partners pregnant, and Republican legislators are helping them with legal threats and reprisals. At least 15 states, the father of an aborted fetus can sue for the wrongful death of a child. And, again, it's not only is this completely ironic and completely ineffective for the horrific kind of controlling of women Republican mindset, but it is also, I think it is really, really tragic for women's health. And even though, a lot of people can find their way to get abortions and go to other states and stuff, a lot of people can't. A lot of people try and do the right thing and go, by their doctor until it's too late. And a lot of people, especially those in abusive relationships, as this piece here by Judy Levine shows, wonderfully written, not as wonderfully read there by me, but I apologize for that. That really shows, just how tragic, in ways that we don't even often hear about in the media coverage, how tragic that can be. All right, we're back on Friday. It's Newsflash.